Welcome. This is our first one-on-one session. We had the Velocity Virtual Summit, what feels like 6 months ago, but I really only think it was like a couple months ago. Huge hit. We had like over 500 people attend, a ton of outreach, and we've started kind of just organically sharing the content. But the goal of that was just to bring a lot of smart and fun people together and build community and just share knowledge. We just want to keep doing that moving forward. So there's going to be one-on-one calls every single month where it'll either be, myself chatting with someone like Mr. Shray. Sam will come on and also chat with folks. And we're just going to make a series of it, continue to share it, and just try to continue to like build community around what we're trying to do. So Shray, welcome. This is monumental.
Thanks for having me.
First one. We obviously have known each other for a while now. We're buddies, we're in San Diego, and then you're obviously a globetrotter. You're all over. You're an investor, you're an advisor, you run your own marketing company, but it all started at GNC. So I figured it would be super helpful if you just gave everybody, the 5-minute rundown on your background and then how you got to launching Good Peeps, and then we can kind of just dive into it.
Yeah, so the elevator pitch on me is I grew up in San Diego where everyone's sexy, in shape, and on the news food trends. But I grew up in that era where cereal was still considered healthy. You weren't sure if a Diet Coke was really zero sugar. And my parents came straight from India. And so they didn't really understand American food and what that was doing to my body. So growing up got pretty big. I was about 280 pounds, 290 pounds at my peak. So I was a thick boy going into college. And so I thought that, I wanted to be a psychology major, kind of understand, my relationship with food. And that's what I thought was the problem. But ended up in my major to a biochem major. And then I ended up falling in love with nutrition, ended up in college losing 130 pounds, did a bunch of kind of food and beverage research at, the lab that I was working at. And kind of, at the end of my weight loss journey, ended up deciding that rather than a doctor, let me go work with the brands that are helping people live better lives, healthier lives, kind of, changing what people put into their mouths is the best way to kind of change the rest of, how you feel. And so that started off at GNC. I was just one of their sales reps, was on the floor, just slinging supplements back in the day. Ended up spending some time there, got really good at someone walked in, I have 2 to 3 seconds to understand who they are, figure out what they need, and kind of, sell them something that, I think would fit their lifestyle. Ended up being there for a little while, ended up, every 19-year-old taking every single supplement humanly possible. And ended up, kind of getting let go from there when I was a kid because I just took so many samples. But for a college student, what else are you going to do? So after GNC was, still a science nerd, was obsessed with caffeine. One of my friends introduced me to matcha, fell in love with that. I ended up going from, 7-8 cups of coffee a day to, 1 cup of coffee, 1 cup of matcha. Never felt better. My anxiety went, into the floor. I just had clarity of mind. And so I was I want to work at a matcha company. This was when there was still 4 or 5 matcha companies. Just in the US, it's still small, but growing now. But ended up working at a company called Chacha Matcha. I was the marketing manager there. Did a lot of fun stuff with, influencers, celebrities, helped them launch on, digital, helped them launch the RTD beverage and, did some fun brand collabs there. Moved on to being the head of marketing at a company called Nugs, which then got rebranded to Simulate. And then, more recently was head of digital and growth at Healthy Kombucha. We ended up then getting acquired by First Beverage. And then I started my own company called Good Peeps. And so Good Peeps kind of helps brands in kind of one of 3 ways on the marketing side. One, we'll call it brand marketing. And so for us, brand marketing is no longer collab giveaway posts on organic social. Our version of brand marketing is, really quickly get through your packaging, your design system, your art direction, your tone of voice, etc. But really today, in today's day and age, it's all about short form content creation. So we help our brands a lot with their short form and just getting, as many eyeballs as humanly possible. We don't focus on our whole theory is basically no one wants an ad. No one wants to feel like a brand's talking to them. They just want to be entertained. And so our focus is on making really fun, entertaining, creative. The second bucket that we help, our brands with is all things direct to consumer. So like classic performance, retention, web, landing pages, CRO. And then kind of, our biggest service business right now is retail marketing. So you think about like direct to consumer over the past couple of years, ad costs have gone up, shipping has gone up, COGS has gone up. And so for a lot of food, beverage, alcohol, supplement companies, direct to consumer is, a really challenging channel for them to kind of, make that a profitable activation. And, marketing from a brand perspective has always been a little wishy-washy in terms of its impact that it has. And so it's like, you have the right channels, right? Like everyone is, on their phones more than ever, on their laptops more than ever. And so like, how can you use what you're doing on direct consumer from a paid media perspective, an email perspective, landing pages, content, but then direct that towards helping support our retail brands or, our brands in retailers. So, brands come to us and they say, hey, we want to go crush it in Walmart, in Target, in Costco. And, we work with a bunch of different tech partners, obviously Vizer being one of them, to help go and drive, trial and velocity at our, at those key retailers that we're trying to have impact at. Also, I personally advise and invest in a couple of other, brands across both consumer side, like invested in Feastables, invested in Chamberlain Coffee, Good Sport, a bunch of, the celebrity backed brands, a lot of the kind of, Asian backed brands or Asian American backed brands like Fly by Jing, Sanzo, and then a lot of consumer tech. So all things like Postscript, Akendo, obviously partner really closely with you guys. So that's kind of the 101.
All right. That was good. A hyper fast life summary in 6 minutes. I wanted to dive into something that you said that I've always found really interesting. And I feel like I could talk about it I feel like an old head, but I feel like I could talk about it all the time. Like you mentioned the kind of the difference in costs rising since maybe like pre 2020, honestly, I feel like is when all of that started to happen. Yeah. What have been some of the shifts in marketing trends that you've seen from, that well-funded money was essentially free time period to now where interest rates are high? Obviously VCs have slowed down or at least tightened on like what they're looking for and got a lot more specific. And with marketing being, arguably what second largest expense behind COGS for these brands, like how have you seen the shift in mindset and strategies move from like pre-COVID to today?
Yeah, I would say that the last 2 years has been tough for both digital and capital. On the capital market side, I would say, VCs were the ones that started this problem, which is like they were also getting free money. Debt was basically free. Every LP that they ever chatted with was like, please just take my money and do something with it. And so they pumped the market from first the tech side on these crazy valuations, and just like trying to get as many points up on the board to see if one of them hit or not. And that then paid off the rest of it. And so the idea or theory was like, let's just try to go do the same thing in consumer. The game ended up becoming was that these founders were way more focused on raising capital than like building an actual sustainable business. And so you saw like most of the conversation, like you're also in the investor scene, was more about who they were raising from, how much they were raising, and how close they, how fast they were at closing the round versus people loving it. Are you getting, solid retail distribution and partnerships? Are you building your brand? And so now that a lot of the debt market is kind of dried up, as well as the, the venture market's a little bit more selective with what brands they're working with because they know that they could put money elsewhere to get a better ROI during these times. It's going to filter through a lot of like what we call like the bullshit brands, where it's like, if you did not focus on product, you did not focus on quality, you did not have a good story behind why you founded the business and started the business, I think that a lot of people are about to hop out of the game because it's now become tough. And so the people that actually like end up loving it and talking about food and beverage all the time, like we do, you'll see that, I think a few will stay and a lot will kind of dwindle down slowly over the next couple of months. But from a marketing perspective, it's like you have this all going on. And then at the exact same time, all the privacy stuff was going on with iOS 14. So like, if you think about 2 years ago, you just throw up a Facebook ad and like you were doing the God's work at that point. Like Facebook's targeting could find you at the perfect moment of any time throughout the day with you with the highest purchase intent. Like I literally just had to put a picture up that said, this is delicious water, you should try it today. And 9 times out of 10, you were going to have a pretty awesome, profitable direct consumer business. But what ended up happening was that everyone figured out what the arbitrage was. Everyone started spending on advertising. as that happens, competition goes up, costs go up. And so you had to be really creative, I would say, in the last 2 years in terms of your content, your landing pages, your offers. But then what ended up happening was that on the direct to consumer side, then all of the privacy setting stuff started to happen. And so it was even harder for you to win if you didn't have product, let's call it product channel fit in terms of like, is your product a good product for Facebook or Instagram? And so it's even harder to now, really crush it on direct to consumer in a profitable way. And when you're looking at a lot of what private equity and kind of venture-backed businesses, as well as like most of the acquirers, if you're a venture-backed business that wants to get acquired by a Coke or Pepsi, you really now need to focus on like, can you build a community and can you get meaningful distribution and get good velocity? So I think that's like the big shift now in kind of our space that we're working in. And so, partners like you guys, partners like Numerator, a lot of these other guys now help us use digital to drive retail. And that's the thing that people care about at the end of the day now.
Yeah. And I think you touched on it really well, that building the community has kind of led to the rise of, if you look up on Google Trends, how many people are searching omnichannel and omnichannel marketing, it's probably skyrocketed in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
How are you working with brands to help build that community and like build up those email lists, build up those, SMS lists? And how important is it to have that kind of more, I guess, like friendship with your customer in that standpoint? And how does Good Peeps, I guess, just support brands from that point of view?
You end up kind of realizing that the word community means nothing anymore, because everyone used to think that it was like this like tiny group on Facebook that everyone was like talking to one another, like making connections. But when you look at like all of the biggest brands that like I think a lot of people take inspiration from, like let's call a couple of my like personal favorites, like Aloe Yoga, ASRV, Apple, these like huge, just brands that have just been killing it over the past years that we all talk about with each other, that we all think are cool. They don't have quote unquote communities as much as they have awesome content that gets a shit ton of distribution. And so when I'm thinking about, what's the best way to build community, you do awesome marketing to the point where all of your friends are talking about you. So you think about Liquid Death, they have an awesome community of people that love them, but it's not because Liquid Death is like texting everybody in a Slack chat being like, hey, so what did you guys do today? It's like, what they did is that they make awesome creative and these just super interesting campaigns that gets everyone talking about you. And I think that's the new form of community building in today's era.
Yeah, I agree. I think people don't want to be like spammed all the time, which like in the past that could have been misconstrued as community. And now it's like, yeah, people want to more so identify with a brand, I think is really what's important. From a retail marketing standpoint, in the past, it's been work with an influencer, pay him $5,000 and pray to God, that they send in some people.
Yeah.
It's Ibotta, it's Inmar, it's retailer apps. What have you guys seen in the shift? Like I personally, I feel like I see a ton of paid ads nowadays that are like, hey, go into X store and get this product. Like, what are you guys advising your brands to do to use online spends, which like, traditionally this money would be going to Facebook ads, driving D2C traffic, to now pivoting and focusing on how we can use those budgets to drive retail traffic?
Yeah. So I'll first start with like e-retail, and then I'll get into kind of like everything outside of that. So first off, what these other e-retail platforms, GoPuff, Drizzly, Instacart, have done a great job of timing themselves in the market on, is that now with Facebook going down, you have all these new e-retail platforms that are absolutely killing it for our brands. Because what you lost now with Facebook, with all that first party data being gone, you have these platforms like Instacart where they own all of the data. They see what brands you're searching for. They see what locations you're looking up at. They see where you're buying your groceries from on Instacart. And so a good amount of our budget is actually starting to shift into those platforms, because Instacart, for example, is basically trying to become the next Amazon, but plugging in with their retailers. So you're seeing that they drive awesome ROI for our brands across search, display, video ads. A lot of things that you would be using typically on Facebook, you're now able to do through these e-retail platforms. And so we've shifted, I'd say about like 20 to 30% of what we would normally have been spending on paid social for direct to consumer into that bucket. And so that's like incredibly high ROI. I think it does a good job of like really building the middle of funnel and like really taking advantage of the bottom of funnel and getting people to buy. So we spent a good amount of capital there. The next one is geo-targeted paid social. And so, we're not, the brands that we work with, they're not Oreos, right? Oreos total addressable market is every single household in the United States. And so the way that they can win is that they could basically say, hey, we're going to do a collab with Pokemon that gets attention. And we are going to make sure that every single fucking human in existence sees this thing. And we think that 2 or 3% of the household penetration that we're in will connect with this, and they'll go and buy, the Oreos at Walmart the next time they're in store. Most of our brands, they're in that like kind of 20 to 350 million range. So awesome household penetration, but not national brands yet. And so you can't be doing these like huge, big advertising spends on paid social where you're just optimizing towards like frequency and number of impressions. That doesn't work. No one cares in that way. And so what we do is that we use kind of geo-targeting. So it's like, hey, let's affect specific regions and areas. Like I think brands are best built when you're focused in key markets at first, and then letting a lot of people talk about them from there. And so, for example, let's call one of our brands, Wild Chips, for example, right? Like they are Nashville born and bred, and so we want to absolutely dominate there. We obviously have all of our other retailer partners supporting, but what we'll do is that we'll say, hey, what are like those 4 or 5 key markets that we want to really support? Let's use paid social to target those specific cities. Let's then use data providers like Numerator to then tell us like, who's buying salty snacks, who's buying, our competitor, who's buying our brand. So we could figure out, are those people from the age of 30 to 45? Are they 20-year-olds? Are they 65-year-olds, right? Whatever have it be. And so we use all those insights from Numerator in terms of making our targeting better. We then get the geo, we then get the targeting from our data providers. We then run a myriad of creative because like what you just called out, I think a lot of brands are kind of optimizing for the short term right now in paid social where they're like, get your Zen water for $2 off today at Target. I think that resonates with a certain amount of people that are in category that want to buy today and they need that push. But we go about building the brand in those local markets using paid social. So like, for example, with Wild, right? The founder story of Jason talking about why he started the company, that's going to be getting a bunch of engagement, similar to our organic strategy. Like I'm optimizing towards views, towards clicks, towards shares. From there, I'm going to be getting a lot of content of people trying the product out. I'm going to be getting other celebrities and influencers whitelisting their creative. And then at the end, hitting people with some content that is optimized towards like, hey, now that you know a little bit about us, if you want to try it, it's a couple bucks off today. And so we then go and run those kind of local retailer specific offers for our brands where it's like we picked the markets, we figured out the audiences, we made a lot of content that's optimized towards engagement and view through. And then we hit you with an offer at the end that says, hey, want to try us? Get it for $2 off of your first order. That is killing for our brands. Like that, I think that has been the biggest hack. That's the biggest arbitrage. We're running this across almost every single one of our companies, and like we cannot seem to spend enough money into it. So if you're a big brand, small brand, whatever size, like this strategy is working. The thing that'll differentiate you right now is content, is creative, and the landing pages that you send people to. So that's where I think all the kind of delineation happens in terms of impact now. Because I think everyone's running the same playbook. And so like when you're looking at what's actually driving the difference in impact, it's the quality of the activity. It's no longer just like doing the activity itself that's, differentiating you.
You touched on a lot. I have 3 different avenues that we could go down, but I think this one may be the easiest because So you guys have a playbook. You obviously didn't start out immediately knowing exactly what to do. So what were some of the hurdles that you ran into when testing this? Because my assumption is a lot of the people who are going to listen to this afterwards or who are listening now have run into those similar hurdles. So I'd be curious to know, like, if you could identify what they were and then what you did to remedy those.
One like anything in marketing, you need to test into it, and that requires you to spend money on trying things out. And so in today's age where money is, you know, harder to come by than normal, like you need to be really good at being able to convey, you know, why you think that this is going to do well. And you need to really put your best foot forward in terms of like, we will make the best creative, have the best offers, etc., and really lean into it. Because I think, you know, something that a lot of founders are jaded by with their marketing teams, that they're spread so thin all the time that they're just like trying to do a little bit of everything. Where like when it comes to these bigger integrations and activations, you need to really get the full kind of, all hands on deck to make sure that the activation is like successful. But like once it's kind of proves itself out, like it'll probably be one of your biggest marketing threats. I think another thing that's really scary, right, is like direct to consumer marketing is immediate. You spend a couple dollars on an ad, and in a couple of seconds after transaction, you could see ROI on it. And so I think that a lot of marketing became last click, how can we drive as much revenue today? And a lot of what we're now doing as marketers is going back into, building these longer payback windows in terms of what we're doing from a marketing perspective. So, it used to be, what can we be doing to drive revenue yesterday? Whereas a lot of this new kind of era of brand marketing is going to be, how are we building a brand and staying top of mind for longer periods of time? And that takes time to scale up. And so there has to be a level of kind of faith that's coming from the founders that we work with. And so I would love to say that, I'm really good at getting founders to believe in marketing. But what we do on our side is we just don't work with founders that don't get marketing. Like if I have to explain to you why my job exists, it just won't be a good fit. And so you need to understand whom you're working with and kind of what their focuses are from a business perspective. Because you'll just have some founders that honestly are just like, we're a product company and we just want to focus on like, how do you get 37 SKUs inside of a retail store and like hope like 10 of them hit. And like you'll never win the battle of trying to explain to them why marketing is important. Whereas we work with the brands that and the founders that want marketing to win, and so that makes our job a lot easier because it's more about taking a number of calculated risks and swings until something starts working. So I would say like that's been the biggest thing that's let us skip having a lot of barriers when trying out a lot of this new level of kind of marketing stuff. Because we just work with people who have the same kind of goals and visions as us. And the last part of it is like, this is the one that I think most marketers can resonate with the most, is getting creative approvals in terms of like what feels on brand, what doesn't feel on brand, and kind of all the subjectivity that happens with a lot of brand marketers and performance marketers. And so the quote that I use with all of our brands is like, whatever feels on brand is great. It makes everyone on the team feel good about themselves. But what's not on brand in my eyes is something that gets 0 views, 0 clicks, and 0 engagement. And so if something gets distribution and gets engagement, guess what? That's on brand because that's what's resonating with the consumer. And so I think having a little bit more flexibility in terms of, what your why is and how you think consumers are going to resonate with that is like a huge thing that brands are struggling with right now, and you can see it.
Interesting. That's okay. Again, you touched on a lot there. I think like one, the transition from marketing being like, I feel like people viewing it as more of like a transaction, like, okay, here's my ad, here's $5 off, go buy the product, versus now it seems like you guys are really laying into that, loyalty play, longer payback windows, resonating with the consumer. And then also kind of like the founder side of things, not having an ego from the, I know you think the brand is this is what's resonating though, and we should continue to invest in this channel. So all of those I think are pretty awesome points. You talk about content and the engagement, which I think is super interesting because creating content has to be one of the most expensive things to do as it relates to time and then also money at the end of the day. What have you guys seen when from a content creation perspective for brands that they could adopt, today? That's maybe not, doesn't have to be entirely low lift, but something that like has a pretty solid ROI and a repeatable process for them to be able to just pump out highly effective content, whether that be TikTok, whether that be visuals for ads, whether that be landing pages. Like what have you guys seen that's a pretty clear indicator of success?
So if you're a food product or a beverage product, everyone thinks that it's trends, hopping on trending videos, et cetera, et cetera. And so you see that every single brand kind of copying one another, right? Like I would say a perfect example of this is like We're Really Not Strangers 3 years ago started killing it in terms of like a lot of this like meta quote based content. And then every brand became that. And then you saw that like, Liquid Death started doing some crazy marketing in terms of getting out there. And then everyone started becoming crazy. And so like my biggest piece of advice is figure out who the hell you guys are and what 20-year play that you want consumers to kind of feel and think about your brand, and then work on making as many pieces of content that try to convey that message. And so like the first 100 pieces of content you'll make will probably not work. Like there's like this awesome video that Mr. Beast kind of launched on YouTube, or I think he's doing a podcast, which is like, his quote was perfect, which is like, I did 1,000 videos until until I got any amount of engagement. And it's because my first 1,000 videos did not deserve the engagement. And so rather than him trying to change the way that he was, or trying to change the topic that he was talking about, or trying to change who he was as a human, he just focused on getting better at delivery and figuring out how to tell that story in a way that resonated with consumers. Because I think that with a lot of marketers, they're worried about taking a lot of swings because of this kind of like brand degradation thing that everyone worries about, where it's like losing out on the opportunity cost of figuring this out is way more detrimental to the brand than never taking a swing at all. So I say, that's our biggest thing. Our secret sauce is that we just keep going until something hits. And what my general piece of advice is the more that you can get an iPhone looking at you with a good mic, and either your founder or someone on the team that like really loves to talk about the product, that content has always done the best for us, because people digest content about people, not about brands. People listen to stories, they don't listen to ads. And so when you're thinking about the creative that you should be pushing, it should be as native to the platform as it could possibly be. Consumers now more than ever can figure out what's an ad, in a couple of seconds. So don't make something that feels like that.
Perfect segue. We have a bunch of questions submitted, so I figured for the last, maybe 15 minutes, we can hammer at these. But what you just talked about, I think, is a good response to the first one, which, if you have more to add to it. But how can a small and medium-sized brand, you talk about your clients being in that 20 to 350 range, maybe, for these in the 5 to 50 range, right, somewhere in there. How can a small or medium-sized brand make the most impact from brand building? So what can they do out of the gate in the early stages that's going to see, lay a solid foundation for moving forward?
This is the first time ever in marketing where the barrier to entry is zero. And so what used to happen is that you needed to have big ad budgets, you needed to work with big celebrities, with influencers. And then it kind of converted into like, you need to work with these micro influencers, but then that got saturated. It's the first time ever where if you're a brand that can make really great content on short form, you can just get distribution because the algorithms will allow you to. And so like, my advice to any of the brands that, I end up advising or investing or operating is like, the best bang for buck is just you picking up your iPhone and shooting some content and talking about your product, your business, your why, your consumers, your process, like whatever have it be. Just start talking and telling stories, and like you will get eyeballs, you will get site traffic. So focus on organic, and the rest of your business will kind of figure itself out.
Another question from a friend of mine. Any Good Peeps brands leveraging brand ambassadors in their marketing strategy? And if so,
yeah,
so work from that standpoint.
So one of them is Cage. Cage is our supplement brand. And we've been with those guys for the last year and a half, and they have a community of, over like 500 ambassadors. The way that I always look at it, the way that I look at ambassadors is like your boots on ground brand promoters. And so what we do is that we incentivize them in a couple of ways. Incentive one, you get the homie hookup, and we'll swag you out with a discount anytime you want to order our product, just because like, you're a super fan. Let's make sure that, you stick with us. And so that just from an LTV perspective, even though we're not quote unquote, giving out product, we're giving a 20 or 30% discount code. The LTV of those customers from a profitability perspective is in the top like 1 or 2%. That's one. Two, content is the name of the game. They help us with making creative. And so they're constantly posting stuff on stories. They're constantly posting stuff on reels. And like my job is as simple as just hitting share on the caged account. And then lastly, it's like people want to hear from other people that your product is good. And so they help us get a lot of those reviews, a lot of those short form kind of, I took Cage for X days and here's how I feel. And so they act as a validator for us. So I look at them more as like as kind of like a supplemental, like add on the icing on top in terms of just like validating your business. But I think it's a little bit harder in today's era to scale an ambassador program and have that be like your exclusive brand channel, because like what ends up happening a lot of the time is that your brand ends up becoming defined by your ambassadors and not by the story that you're trying to tell. And so what you end up also realizing is that your brand ambassador or your ambassador manager has their own view on like who the people should be in that ambassadors program. And so your brand kind of becomes siloed and defined by these, creators. And you want to be the brand itself and then have these guys then validate and kind of, perpetuate the pillars that you're trying to establish as a business, as a brand.
Yeah, you need evangelists. But what's cool about that, and you mentioned it, how the ambassadors help with UGC, that helps you bolster your omni-channel strategy, kind of continuing to move forward with the omni-channel concept. Like, what are some things brands could be doing today to build out email lists, to build out SMS lists, to just not be, I guess, reliant on, third-party advertising platforms to reach consumers, but to really own that relationship with their person?
One, a lot of brands do a shit ton of sampling, a bunch of events, all of that. They do a lot of the IRL stuff. And they're doing nothing in terms of getting people emails and phone numbers at these events. Like, don't have a QR code. No one's going to scan that. No one's going to fill that out at the event. What you need to do is that at these events, you get the people to try your product and you say, if you love it, we'll ship you a couple $1 off coupon, or we'll get you a discount on your direct to consumer order. Just give us your phone number, give us your email. And we have brands at Good Peeps who are getting like 10,000 SMS signups per month right now as a result of just them taking advantage of what they're doing on the event side. And so that for them is like just the value that they're getting from the SMS side is paying off all the events just off money that I'll be making from them on SMS over the next 12 months. Another thing that you could be doing, and I know I sound like a broken record, is getting a bunch of traffic to your website. So how can you do that? It's through either getting people to know about your brand through short form content, through long form content, through influencer creative, through SEO. Everyone sleeps on that. It's so awesome. We have brands that have a couple 100,000 visits per month to the website as a result of like stuff that they built out 4 years ago, 3 years ago. And so we're getting traffic in perpetuity in that way. But it's more like, how can you get as many organic placements as possible? Is that PR? Is that SEO? Is that in person? And making sure that you have an event or something that says, hey, if this is valuable to you and you want more, sign up for our email, sign up for our SMS. There's no hacky way of using ads to get a good quality email or SMS audience anymore. You don't want those people. You don't want to pay to get email and SMS people into the brand. The quality of that audience is often quite shit. It's more about like focusing on building the brand story and then making it as easy as possible for someone to then sign up for email and SMS.
Once brands, I guess, because building an SMS list, like there's a lot of folks that I talk to that are just like, yeah, we just haven't done that, or we haven't really focused on doing that. And now we're starting to get into it. So those are good ways to help build it. But then once you have those people in your ecosystem, you've got to be super careful with how often you message them, the stuff you're messaging them with. Like, have you seen any success stories from your brands on texting campaigns, on maybe email campaigns that aren't super spammy, but they're just like delivering value? Like Dough Foods, for example, just launched a newsletter and it's purely about delivering value. Like it's not about selling their product. And I thought that was a really interesting play. What have you seen other brands do that you work with, you advise with, you invest with, just anything from that side?
So like SMS. So I'm gonna have some amount of bias in this because I'm also an advisor to an SMS platform, Postscript. If you're using anything else, you're tripping. Uh, but Postscript, our partner, we work with them on all of our brands from an SMS perspective. Um, and so like, here's what we've learned in the last, like, I would say 2 years, 3 years of doing this. One, the open rates are insane. Like everyone opens every single text they get. It's 99%, 100% open rates. And so when you think about like a deliverability perspective, like your organic content can get 10, 20, let's call it 30% viewership in terms of your number of followers, people that see your content on Instagram. Say that on TikTok, you have a couple of viral pieces of content that get, a couple, million views, 20 million views, 100 million views. But with SMS, it is 100% engagement rate. It's 99% engagement rate. And so if that's the case, you have to really make sure that you're saying something that is really well thought out in terms of its intent. Because like what a lot of brands are doing right now is that they're just using SMS as like a what's the promo of the day or promo of the week strategy. And so like I've seen our brands that do that on the back end, and the unengagement rate, the unsubscribe rate is through the roof. Like because it's the easiest channel to also unsubscribe from. All you have to do is just text stop. You'll get, no one will text you from then on out. And so you can't just hit them with promos. You can't just hit them with deal of the days. You need to be a little bit more targeted with that. It's like what you just called out with, I think it was Doe. Turn it into a really fun channel. I should be pumped. Like when you text me or, Elijah texts me, or when, Nick Sharma texts me, like all of the friends in the space, I'm like I'm going to love what I'm about to read. And so when I think about like a brand, if I'm Cage or if I'm Doe or if I'm, whatever have it be, it's like, why does your consumer get value from your brand and product today? Is it that it's making them healthier? Is it making me entertained? Is it something that's indulgent and makes me feel good? And then the next step should be, now how does my SMS, how does my marketing then line up to that feeling and back into that and repeat that without me having to be like promo heavy or like, and by the way, did you know our product has 20 grams of protein? It's more about like, how can you get that feeling, that end result that your product gives the consumer, but in text form? Is that education content? Is that like tips and tricks of the day? Is that a stupid joke like that just makes you laugh? So I think like thinking about SMS more as a marketing channel than a CRM channel has been the way that our brand has seen success on that platform.
Yeah, I agree. I think there needs to be some sort of value exchange, and that doesn't mean it needs to be a discount or some sort of promo, but just like, I'm giving you my phone number. I either want to be entertained, I want to learn something new. Obviously, maybe I get a discount for something I love, some sort of benefit for me exchanging you, which like arguably is the hardest thing to get, is somebody's phone number from like that you've never met. You never just go up to a random person and give them your number, right?
No.
So I think maybe with one last question, and we can probably wrap it up, but what's, I guess, your view on maybe like a core strategy for brands moving forward, like through the rest of the year, capture that omni-channel approach, remarket to them with content and brand? Like, can you maybe summarize your like ideal marketing approach for brands trying to use online to drive retail traffic, but then also keep those customers engaged throughout the year?
Yeah, that's a great question. So like, we always think of things as like pillars to house. And so like what we'll do is like, all right, one, from a brand perspective, you need to be able to be ready for when you have scale. So like, what does that mean? Say that you have a couple of pieces of content that go viral, your ads start crushing it. All like you start getting all this buzz and attention, but like your website is shit. You don't have an email strategy, you don't have an SMS strategy, you don't have an app. Like Tapcart is a great provider on that side. You don't have, whatever have it be, in terms of getting people to then fall in love with the brand. You need to make sure that you have that kind of house in place first that would let you scale. Otherwise, you're just going to get a bunch of people that think you're interesting, and then they kind of leave you because there wasn't that lower reason to fall in love. And so we first fix all of our brands on that side. From there, we then go about like maximizing number of dollars we're spending on ROI, bottom of funnel things, which is like, hey, there is an upper threshold in terms of today, in terms of how many people know about my brand that I could spend on Google search, Instacart ads, uh, ads with Vizer, all of that, where it's like, hey, I'm now maximizing the number of dollars I could be spending responsibly in terms of getting that conversion or getting that engagement today. And then from there, once I've maximized that, it's then all about, cool, I now have the ability to get people to fall in love with us. I know that no matter what, if I'm scaling a spend up here, I'm going to be able to capture all that intent across all the other things that we're doing. And then your core job is marketing is now turned into two things after that. It is content and it's distribution. And so your job as a team is, how do I make it so that I'm resourcing our marketing team to be focused on people who are producing creative? Is it creators? Is it editors? Is it post-production people? Is it, whatever have it be? And then who are the channel nerds and experts that can help get that stuff distributed? Is that through paid? Is that through organic? Is that through collab posts with other brands? Is that how are we getting more eyeballs on the stuff that we're doing? How do we make the best possible content, that one can make? Like, I think that a lot of marketing teams have a lot of bloat in kind of, in their overhead of like social media managers, these like all these middle managers that aren't doing anything. Like, optimize in terms of getting people to just make creative and get as many people viewing it, and everything else as a business will work itself out.
Mic drop. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, that was awesome, man. I think
Yeah.
I think you dropped a ton of information on folks, which was good. And you completed the very first one that we've done on the one-on-one basis, and I'm pumped for the ones that come in the future. But thank you, man. How can people maybe get in touch with you? You don't have to just like totally say your email, but if there's a way to get in touch with you on LinkedIn.
I'll say my email. Yeah, my email is shray@thepeeps.co. So SHRAY at the peeps PEEPF.co. You can also find me on LinkedIn. You can slide into my DMs there. And then if you want to hit me up on Instagram or Twitter, it's just Shray VJ. That's SHRAY, letter V, and then J.
Perfect. All right, dude. Well, we're gonna wrap this up. Let people get back to their day. Hopefully, get some lunch in. But this was awesome. I really appreciate you. I really appreciate you coming on with us. So
thanks for having me. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you for the next one.